Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, the UES Vigilant, staring out at the endless stars. He had been out here for 3 months now, patrolling the empty space between star systems. It was boring work, but someone had to do it. The ship moved slowly through the dark, its engines humming quietly. Jake was 42 years old and had been flying ships for 20 years. He had seen a lot of things in space, but lately, everything seemed quiet. Too quiet. His crew of 35 people had started to complain about the lack of action. They wanted to go home to Earth, but their orders were clear: stay on patrol. Watch for anything unusual. The bridge was small but comfortable. Jake sat in his captain's chair, drinking coffee from a metal cup. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Amy Brooks, was checking the ship's computers. She was young, maybe 28, with short brown hair and sharp green eyes. She was good at her job and never complained about the long missions. "Captain," Amy sighed, looking up from her screen. "I'm getting some strange readings from the Kepler 442 system. The energy patterns don't match anything in our database." Jake put down his coffee cup and walked over to look at her screen. The numbers dancing across the display meant nothing to most people, but Jake had been reading these screens for years. Something was definitely wrong. "How far away is it?" he asked. "About 2 days at full speed," Amy replied. "But sir, our orders say we should avoid contact with unknown technology." Jake nodded. The orders were clear, but his curiosity was stronger. In 20 years of space travel, he had never seen energy readings like these. They seemed to pulse and change in ways that suggested intelligence behind them. Someone or something was using technology that Earth had never seen before. "Plot a course for Kepler 442, Jake said. "But keep us at a safe distance. I want to know what's out there." Amy looked worried, but entered the commands into the navigation computer. The ship began to turn slowly, its massive engines pushing them toward the unknown signals. Jake returned to his chair and picked up his coffee. He had a feeling this patrol was about to become much more interesting, far away from Jake's ship. On a world called Zentara Prime, the Galactic Council was meeting an emergency session. The council chamber was a huge round room with seats for representatives from dozens of different alien species. Most of the seats were full today, and the mood was dark. Ambassador Lisa Kane sat in the human section, but she was alone. For 50 years, humanity had sent only one representative to these meetings. Lisa was 55 years old with gray hair and tired eyes. She had been Earth's voice in galactic politics for 15 years, and she was getting sick of it. The council members were all talking at once, their voices mixing together in a dozen different languages. The translation devices built into each seat worked hard to make sense of the chaos. Lisa understood most of what they were saying, and none of it was good news. "Order, order," called the council president, a tall blue creature called Velamon. His species, the Zelani, had been running the council for over 1,000 years. They were good at talking and making peace, but they were not good at fighting wars. "We must discuss the Vorthic situation," Velamon continued. "They have now destroyed 12 star systems. Their fleets are moving toward the core worlds. We need a plan." Lisa had heard about the Vorthic. They were a new species that had appeared from the center of the galaxy 6 months ago. They were warriors, built like living rocks, and they seemed to enjoy destroying everything they found. So far, nothing had been able to stop them. "What about the Mortek battle fleet?" asked one of the council members. The Mortek were known for being smart and building good weapons. "Destroyed," replied another voice. "The Vorthic ships are too strong. Their weapons cut through our shields like they don't exist." Lisa listened to the fear in their voices. These aliens had been the masters of the galaxy for thousands of years, but now they were scared. They had forgotten what real war looked like. Humanity remembered, but humanity had been quiet for 50 years. What about asking the humans for help? Someone suggested that the room went silent. Lisa could feel hundreds of alien eyes looking at her. She knew what they were thinking. The humans had powerful ships and weapons, but they had made it clear they wanted to be left alone. Earth's message to the galaxy 50 years ago had been simple. We're going home. Don't follow us. The humans have made their position clear, Velomon said carefully. They wish to remain neutral in galactic affairs. Lisa said nothing. She knew things about human military strength that these aliens could not imagine, but she also knew her orders. Earth wanted to stay out of galactic politics. The human government believed that isolation was safer than getting involved in alien wars, but Lisa also knew something else. If the Vorthik kept expanding, they would eventually reach human space. When that happened, the 50 years of peace would end very quickly. While the Council argued, far across the galaxy, the Vorthik were planning their next move. Their war fleet was massive, thousands of ships built for one purpose: conquest. The ships looked like giant metal insects, all sharp edges and weapon ports. High Commander Zexthil stood in the command center of his flagship, studying a holographic map of the galaxy. He was 8 feet tall and covered in thick gray skin that looked like stone. His eyes were black and cold, and his mouth was full of sharp teeth. Like all Vorthik, he lived for war. "Report," he commanded, his voice deep and rough. "We have identified our next target," replied his intelligence officer, Sub-Commander Veltar. "A small system with only one inhabited planet. The species calls itself human. They appear to be weak and isolated." Zexthel looked at the star map. The system was called Sol, and it sat alone on the edge of the galaxy. According to their information, the humans had only recently developed space travel. Their technology seemed primitive compared to other galactic civilizations. "How many ships do they have?" Zexthel asked. "Unknown," Veltar replied. "But based on their technology level, probably not many. We estimate the entire system could be conquered in less than a day." Zexthel smiled, showing his sharp teeth. "Excellent. The other species fear us now, but they still fight back. It will be good to have an easy victory for once." He turned to his fleet commanders. "Prepare the attack fleets. We move against the human system in 3 days. This will be a simple conquest." The Vorthik had made their first mistake. They had never heard of the galaxy's most important rule, the one that every other species knew by heart: never mess with humans. The rule existed for a very good reason, but the Vorthik were about to learn that reason the hard way. On Earth, in a deep underground facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Alex Murphy was reading the latest intelligence reports. He was a tall man with gray hair and scars on his hands from old battles. He had been in charge of Earth's military for 10 years, and he had hoped never to use the weapons his scientists had been building. The report on his desk was short but terrifying. An alien fleet was moving toward Earth. The enemy called themselves the Vorthik, and they had already destroyed 12 civilizations. They would reach the solar system in less than a week. Alex picked up his secure phone and dialed a number that only 5 people on Earth knew. When someone answered, he spoke just 4 words: "Wake up the fleet." The 50 years of peace were about to end. The galaxy was about to remember why they had made that rule about humans in the first place. Captain Jake Morrison's ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. The stars around them looked normal, but the energy readings on their screens were anything but normal. The signals were stronger now, pulsing in patterns that seemed almost like a heartbeat. "Amy, what are you seeing?" Jake asked his second-in-command. Lieutenant Amy Brooks was bent over her console, her fingers dancing across the controls. "Captain, these readings are incredible. The energy output is massive, but it's not coming from the star. It's coming from ships." Jake felt his blood run cold. Ships meant aliens, and aliens this far from known space meant trouble. How many ships? I count at least 50, maybe more. They're big, Captain. Bigger than anything we've ever built. Amy's voice was steady, but Jake could hear the fear underneath. The bridge crew was silent as they watched the scanner displays. Jake had trained these people well, but none of them had ever faced a real alien threat before. Most humans hadn't. Earth had been peaceful for 50 years. "Captain," called out Ensign Pete Collins from the engineering station, "we're receiving a transmission. It's not directed at us, but we're picking it up." "Put it on speaker," Jake ordered. The bridge filled with harsh grinding sounds that hurt to listen to. The ship's computer tried to translate, but the language was unlike anything in Earth's databases. After a few seconds, the computer managed to produce a rough translation. "Resistance is ended. The colony world is ours. Beginning harvest of the population." Jake felt sick. These aliens were talking about harvesting people like crops. He had heard rumors about aggressive species in the outer galaxy, but he had never believed they could be this cruel. "Amy, are there any human colonies in this system?" he asked. "Negative, sir, but there are colonies from other species. The Mortec have a research station on the 4th planet." Jake knew about the Mortec. They were peaceful scientists who spent their time studying stars and planets. They had never hurt anyone. The idea of them being harvested made Jake angry in a way he hadn't felt in years. "Captain," Pete called out urgently, "I'm detecting movement. Some of those alien ships are heading our way." Jake looked at the tactical display. 3 large ships had broken away from the main group and were moving toward the Vigilant. They were still far away, but they were fast. Very fast. "How long until they reach us?" Jake asked. 20 minutes at their current speed," Amy replied. Jake had a choice to make. His orders were to avoid contact with unknown aliens. The smart thing to do would be to run. But if he ran, he wouldn't learn anything about these creatures. And if they were as dangerous as they seemed, Earth needed to know about them. "Set course for home," Jake ordered. "But take us through the asteroid field on the way out. I want to see what these ships can do." The Vigilant turned and began moving toward the system's outer edge. The 3 alien ships followed, gaining ground. Quickly, Jake watched the tactical display as the distance between them shrank. "Entering the asteroid field now," Amy reported. The space around them filled with floating rocks, some as small as cars, others as big as buildings. Jake had navigated asteroid fields before. It required skill and careful timing. He was curious to see if the aliens could do the same. "They're still following us," Pete called out. "And Captain, they're not slowing down." Jake watched in amazement as the alien ships moved through the asteroid field like it wasn't even there. They twisted and turned between the rocks with impossible grace, never losing speed. Their hulls were dark and angular, covered with weapon ports that looked like hungry mouths. "Captain, they're charging weapons," Amy warned. "Evasive maneuvers," Jake ordered. The Vigilant rolled and dove between the asteroids as energy beams flashed past them. The alien weapons were powerful, turning solid rock into glowing vapor wherever they struck. One beam passed so close to the ship that the hull temperature alarms went off. "Return fire," Jake commanded. The Vigilant's weapons were good by human standards, but they seemed pathetic compared to the alien ships. Their energy beams struck the enemy hulls and barely left marks. The alien ships didn't even slow down. "Captain, our weapons aren't doing any damage," Amy reported. Jake gritted his teeth. The Vigilant was a patrol ship, not a warship. It was built for exploration and keeping the peace, not for fighting monsters like these. But Jake's crew was depending on him, and he wouldn't let them down. "Pete, give me everything the engines have," he ordered. "You got it, Captain," Pete replied. The ship's engines roared louder, pushing them faster through the asteroid field. For the next 10 minutes, Jake played a deadly game of hide-and-seek among the rocks. The alien ships were faster and stronger, but Jake knew these asteroids better. He had studied this field during their approach, and he used every trick he had learned in 20 years of space travel. Finally, the aliens gave up the chase. Maybe. They decided the Vigilant wasn't worth the effort, or maybe they had other business to attend to. Jake didn't care why they stopped. He was just grateful his ship and crew were still alive. "Set course for Earth," Jake ordered. "Best possible speed." Meanwhile, back in the Sol system, things were happening that most humans knew nothing about. In the underground command center beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Alex Murphy was meeting with the most important military leaders on Earth. Admiral Kate Sullivan sat across from him, her face grim. She was in charge of the Solar Defense Force, the secret organization that protected Earth from threats the public never heard about. Kate was 50 years old and had been preparing for this day her entire career. "The Vorthik fleet will reach the outer system in 4 days," she reported. "Intelligence suggests they have over 200 ships. All of them are warships." General Murphy nodded. He had been reading the reports from Captain Morrison's encounter. The enemy was powerful and ruthless. This would not be an easy fight. "What's the status of our defensive systems?" he asked. "All orbital platforms are online," Kate replied. "The lunar bases are ready. Mars Defense Command is preparing for siege." "Conditions." "But Alex, we haven't tested any of this in real combat. For 50 years, Earth had been building weapons in secret. The orbital defense platforms around Earth looked like communication satellites to casual observers, but they were actually the most powerful weapons ever created by human hands. The moon bases appeared to be mining operations, but they were really military fortresses. Even Mars, with its research colonies, hid weapons that could destroy entire fleets." "What about Protocol 7? Murphy asked. Kate's face went pale. Protocol 7 was Earth's most secret military plan. It involved calling home every human ship in the galaxy and activating weapon systems that had never been used. It was a plan they had hoped never to implement. "We sent the signal this morning," Kate said quietly. "Every human ship, station, and colony has been ordered to return home immediately. The ones that can fight will join the defense fleet. The others will evacuate civilians from the outer colonies." Murphy stood up and walked to the large screen that showed the Sol system. Red dots marked the approaching enemy fleet. Blue dots showed human ships rushing home from across the galaxy. In 4 days, there would be the largest space battle in human history. "Sir," Kate said carefully, "are you sure about this? We could try to negotiate, maybe find a peaceful solution." Murphy turned to look at her. His face was hard as stone. "Kate, these aliens just destroyed 12 civilizations. They're coming here to harvest our people like animals. There will be no negotiation." He pressed a button on his desk, and the screen changed to show Earth from space. The blue planet looked peaceful and beautiful, but Murphy knew that looks could be deceiving. Earth was about to show the galaxy why the other species had made that rule about never messing with humans. "Send a message to all defense commanders," Murphy ordered. "Tell them it's time to remind the galaxy who we really are." The Vorthik war fleet entered the Sol system like a storm made of metal and death. High Commander Zexthal stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the tactical display with satisfaction. The human system looked exactly as his intelligence had predicted, weak and unprepared. "Report," Zexthal commanded his officers. "We have detected several orbital stations around the third planet," replied Sub-Commander Veltar. "They appear to be communication satellites. No weapons detected." Zexthal smiled his cruel smile. "And their fleet?" "Minimal presence. We count less than 50 ships in the entire system. Most appear to be cargo vessels or small patrol craft." The Vorthik commander felt disappointed. He had hoped for at least some resistance. Easy victories were boring, and his warriors needed combat to stay sharp. Still, a conquest was a conquest. Begin with the outer colonies, he ordered. Destroy the military targets first, then harvest the population centers. The Vorthek fleet spread out across the solar system like a disease. War Master Krelinoth led the first attack group toward Mars, where human colonies dotted the red planets. Surface. The planet looked defenseless, with only a few small ships in orbit. Captain Ben Harris commanded the Mars Defense Station, a facility that most people thought was just a mining operation. He watched the approaching alien ships on his screens and felt his stomach tighten with fear. There were 20 enemy vessels heading straight for him, and he had only 3 defense ships to stop them. "This is Mars Defense to all stations, Ben." Transmitted. "Enemy contact confirmed. Prepare for battle." Ben was 35 years old and had been stationed on Mars for 5 years. He had a wife and 2 children back on Earth, and he had promised to come home safely. Now he wasn't sure. He would keep that promise. The Vorthek ships opened fire first. Their energy weapons lit up space like deadly fireworks, striking the orbital platforms around Mars. But instead of destroying the platforms, something unexpected happened. The platforms absorbed the energy and began to glow. "What is this?" "War Master." Krelinoth growled on his ship's bridge. His weapons officer looked confused. "Sir, the human structures are not taking damage. Our weapons seem to be making them stronger." Krelinoth had never seen anything like it. The human platforms were covered with some kind of energy absorption system. Every shot from the Vorthek. Weapons made the platforms brighter and more powerful. Then the platforms began to fire back. The energy beams that came from the Mars Defense Station were unlike anything the Vorthek had ever encountered. They cut through the alien ship's shields like they were made of paper. 3 Vorthek vessels exploded in the first 10 seconds of return fire. "Impossible," Krelinoth shouted. "The humans are supposed to be primitive." Captain Harris watched his screens with grim satisfaction. The Mars Defense Station had been designed specifically to fight against energy weapons. The more the enemy shot at it, the more powerful it became. It was one of humanity's most closely guarded secrets. "All defense ships, attack pattern Alpha," Harris commanded. The 3 human ships moved in perfect coordination, using tactics that seemed to make no sense to the Vorthek. They flew in patterns that looked random, but were actually carefully calculated to confuse enemy targeting systems. The Vorthek had superior numbers and firepower, but the humans had something more important. They had been preparing for this fight for 50 years. The battle for Mars lasted 6 hours. When it was over, 15 Vorthek ships had been destroyed, or damaged beyond repair. Captain Harris had lost one of his defense ships, but the planet's colonies were safe. While the battle raged at Mars, an even larger Vorthek force was approaching Earth's moon. Luna City was home to 3 million humans, making it the largest settlement outside of Earth itself. The city was built inside massive domes that protected it from the vacuum of space. Admiral Kate Sullivan watched the approaching enemy fleet from her command center deep inside the moon. She had 40 Vorthek ships heading toward her position, and she knew they would show no mercy to the civilians above. "All defense systems online," she reported to General Murphy on Earth. "Luna City is as ready as we can make it." "Good luck, Kate," Murphy replied. "Make them pay for every inch." The Vorthek fleet commander, war leader Thexmo, had been given specific orders about Luna City. High Commander Zexthal wanted to make an example of the human civilians. The destruction of the city would show Earth that resistance was hopeless. "Target the civilian domes," Thexmo ordered. "Maximum firepower." The Vorthek ships opened fire on Luna City with everything they had. Energy beams and explosive missiles struck the protective domes in a continuous bombardment. The first dome cracked, then shattered, spilling air and people into the vacuum of space. In the space of 1 hour, 3 million human civilians died. Admiral. Sullivan watched the destruction with tears streaming down her face. Each blip that disappeared from her screen represented thousands of innocent people. Men, women, and children who had never done anything to deserve this fate. "Admiral," one of her officers said quietly, "we're receiving a transmission from Earth." The message was short and came from the highest levels of human government. Luna City has fallen. Protocol 7 is now fully authorized. Show them what happens when they hurt our people. Sullivan wiped the tears from her eyes and activated the lunar defense systems. The moon's surface began to crack and shift as massive weapon platforms rose from hidden bunkers. These weapons had been built in the deepest secrets of human engineering, designed for one purpose: total destruction of enemy fleets. All units. Sullivan broadcast to every human ship in the system. "This is Admiral Sullivan. They have killed our civilians. They have murdered our children. It is time to show them why the galaxy made that rule about humanity." The lunar defense platforms opened fire. The weapons they used were not energy beams or missiles. They were something far more terrible, devices that could tear apart matter itself at the atomic level. The Vorthik ship simply came apart, dissolving into clouds of component atoms. War leader Vexmel had just enough time to scream before his flagship disappeared. Across the solar system, human ships that had been hiding in asteroid fields and behind planets began to move. These were not the patrol ships and cargo vessels that the Vorthak had detected earlier. These were warships built in secret shipyards that had been hidden for decades. The UES Retribution, humanity's largest warship, uncloaked near Jupiter. Admiral Rick Stone stood on its bridge, watching as his ship's artificial intelligence system came online. Darwin, the ship's AI, had been designed during humanity's 50 years of isolation. It could think faster than any organic mind and control weapons systems that no human could operate alone. "Darwin online," the AI announced in a calm, electronic voice. "All systems operational, ready to engage enemy forces. Show them what we've learned about war," Admiral Stone commanded. The human fleet that emerged from hiding was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The ships moved with inhuman precision, coordinated by AI systems that could process battlefield information in microseconds. Their weapons adapted to enemy defenses in real time, learning from each shot and becoming more effective with every engagement. Captain Morrison's ship, the Vigilant, had made it back to Earth just in time to join the counterattack. Jake watched from his bridge as the human fleet formed up around him. Ships he had never seen before, carrying weapons he had never imagined, all preparing to show the Vorthik the price of breaking the galaxy's most important rule. "All ships," came Admiral Stone's voice over the communication system. "Remember Luna City, remember our dead. Make them understand that humanity does not forgive, and humanity does not forget." The real battle for the Sol system was about to begin, and the Vorthak were about to learn why every other species in the galaxy had been so careful to leave the humans alone. The human fleet moved through space like a pack of hunting wolves. Admiral Rick Stone watched from the bridge of the UES Retribution as his ships took positions around the Vorthik forces. The enemy had expected an easy victory, but now they found themselves surrounded by weapons they had never imagined. "Darwin, analyze enemy formations," Stone commanded. The ship's artificial intelligence responded instantly. "Enemy ships show confusion in their movement patterns. They are trying to regroup, but cannot understand our tactical approach. Recommend immediate attack while they remain disorganized." Stone nodded. The Vorthik were warriors, but they fought like wild animals. They relied on superior firepower and brutal tactics. They had never faced an enemy that could think faster than they could react. "All ships, commence attack pattern Omega," Stone ordered. The human fleet split into 3 groups, each moving in directions that seemed random to the Vorthak observers. But Darwin was coordinating every movement, calculating thousands of variables each second. The AI knew exactly where each enemy ship would be and what it would do before the Vorthek commanders had even made their decisions. High Commander Zex Thale stood on his flagship's bridge, watching his tactical display with growing alarm. The human ships were moving in ways that defied military logic. They seemed to be everywhere at once, striking from impossible angles and disappearing before his weapons could lock onto them. "Report," he demanded from his officers. "Sir, we are taking heavy losses," replied Sub-Commander Veltar. "The human weapons are adapting to our defenses. Each shot is more effective than the last." Zexthil could not believe what he was hearing. His intelligence had told him that humans were primitive and weak. But these ships fought with a precision that seemed almost supernatural. Their weapons learned and adapted, becoming deadlier with each passing moment. Captain Morrison commanded a squadron of smaller ships in the battle. His job was to hunt down Vorthak vessels that tried to escape and prevent them from reaching the outer planets. The Vigilant had been upgraded with new weapons during the fleet preparation, and Jake was amazed at their power. "Target the enemy. Destroyer at coordinates 7-7-Mark-4. Jake ordered his weapons officer, Lieutenant Amy Brooks. Amy had been promoted to replace Jake's previous weapons officer, who had been transferred to a larger ship. She was good at her new job and understood the advanced targeting systems better than most. "Target locked," Amy reported, firing. The beam that shot from the Vigilant was not like the old energy weapons Jake remembered. This beam seemed alive, twisting and adjusting its frequency as it traveled through space. When it struck the Vorthek ship, it cut through the alien armor like it was made of soft metal. "Direct hit," Amy called out. "Enemy ship is venting atmosphere. They're finished." Jake watched the alien ship drift away, powerless and defeated. A year ago, that same ship could have destroyed the Vigilant without effort. Now it was just another piece of space debris. The battle was going well, but Jake knew the real test was yet to come. The main Vorthak force was still intact, gathered around their flagship in a defensive formation. High Commander Zexthale was not stupid, even if he was cruel. He would not give up easily. On the lunar surface, Admiral Kate Sullivan coordinated the defense of Earth's inner system. The loss of Luna City had hurt her deeply, but she channeled her grief into cold determination. The Vorthek would pay for what they had done. "Admiral," one of her officers reported, "we're detecting movement from the enemy flagship. It appears to be charging some kind of weapon." Sullivan looked at her tactical display. The Vorthek flagship was 3 times larger than any other ship in their fleet. Intelligence reports suggested it carried weapons powerful enough to destroy entire planets. If Zexthal decided to target Earth directly, millions more would die. "Send a message to Admiral Stone," Sullivan ordered. "Priority target is the enemy flagship. Whatever weapon they're charging, we cannot let them use it." The message reached the Retribution within seconds. Admiral Stone read it and felt his blood run cold. The thought of Earth suffering the same fate as Luna City filled him with rage that he had never felt before. "Darwin, concentrate all firepower on the enemy flagship," Stone commanded. "Admiral, that ship is heavily defended," the AI replied. "Direct assault will result in significant casualties to our forces." "Calculate the casualties if that ship destroys Earth," Stone said quietly. Darwin processed the request in milliseconds. "Understood. Preparing maximum assault pattern." The human fleet reformed into a spear-like formation with the Retribution at its tip. Every ship focused its weapons on a single target, High Commander Zexthal's flagship. The concentrated firepower was unlike anything ever seen in galactic warfare. The Vorthek flagship shuddered under the assault, its shields failing one by one. But Zexthal's ship was built for war, and it had survived many battles. The hull was thick and the weapons were still charging. 30 seconds until the planet killer is ready, Veltar reported to his commander. Zexthil smiled his cruel smile. He would show these humans the price of resistance. Earth would burn, and then the rest of the galaxy would remember why the Vorthek were to be feared. But Darwin had been analyzing the enemy flagship throughout the battle. The eye had identified a weakness that no organic mind would have noticed. The Vorthek ship's power systems were connected in a way that created a tiny gap in their defenses, lasting only milliseconds during the weapon charging cycle. "Admiral Stone," Darwin announced, "I have identified a critical vulnerability. Permission to attempt precision strike." "Do it," Stone replied without hesitation. The Retribution's main weapon fired a single, perfectly aimed shot. The beam was so precisely targeted that it passed through the gap in the Vorthek defenses and struck the flagship's main power core. The explosion that followed could be seen from Earth. High Commander Zexthil had just enough time to realize his mistake before his ship tore itself apart. The Vorthek had been so confident in their superior technology that they had never considered they might face an enemy who could think faster than they could fight. With their flagship destroyed and their commander dead, the remaining Vorthek ships tried to retreat. But the human fleet was ready for them. Ships that had been hiding throughout the solar system emerged to block every escape route. The aliens found themselves trapped in a carefully planned trap. War Master Croanath, now the highest-ranking Vorthek officer still alive, tried to rally his remaining forces. He had 50 ships left out of the original 200, and he knew that retreat was impossible. The only choice was to fight to the death. "All ships, final assault on the human fleet," he transmitted. "For the glory of the Dominion." The surviving Vorthek ships charged the human formation in a desperate last attack. Their weapons blazed with desperate fury, striking at everything within range. Several human ships took damage, and 2 were destroyed completely, but the outcome was never in doubt. The human fleet surrounded the alien ships and systematically destroyed them one by one. The Vorthek fought bravely, but bravery was not enough against enemies who had spent 50 years preparing for this exact battle. When the last Vorthek ship exploded, the solar system fell silent. The battle was over, but Admiral Stone knew that the war was just beginning. The Vorthek Dominion controlled dozens of star systems, and they would send more fleets when they learned what had happened here. "Darwin, prepare long-range communication," Stone ordered. "Send a message to all human colonies and ships throughout the galaxy. Tell them it's time to come home. The real war is about to begin." The artificial intelligence processed the command and began transmitting. Across the galaxy, human ships and settlements received the same message. Earth had been attacked, but Earth had won. Now it was time to show the rest of the galaxy what happened when someone broke the most important rule of all. News of the Vorthek defeat in the Sol system spread across the galaxy like wildfire. On Zentara Prime, the Galactic Council, members sat in stunned silence as they watched the battle recordings that had somehow reached them. The humans had not. Just one. They had completely destroyed a fleet that had conquered 12 civilizations. Ambassador Lisa Kane stood before the council chamber, no longer the quiet representative who had sat alone for 15 years. Behind her, holographic displays showed the burning wreckage of Vorthek ships floating in Earth space. The silence in the room was deafening. "The human fleet is preparing to leave the Sol system," Lisa announced. "They are moving toward Vorthek space with the intention of ending this threat permanently." Council President Velamon, the tall blue Zelani, looked pale and frightened. "Ambassador Kane, surely your people do not intend to launch a war of conquest?" Lisa's face was hard as stone. "The Vorthek killed 3 million human civilians on Luna City. They came to our home with the intention of harvesting our people like animals. There will be consequences." The other council members whispered among themselves in a dozen different languages. They had forgotten what humans were capable of when threatened. The 50 years of peace had made them think that humanity had become soft and civilized. They were learning how wrong they had been. Meanwhile, the human fleet had left the Sol system and was traveling toward the center of the galaxy. Admiral Rick Stone commanded over 500 ships, including vessels that had been hidden in secret bases throughout human space. The fleet was larger and more powerful than anything the galaxy had seen in 1,000 years. Captain Morrison's ship, the Vigilant, flew in formation with the main battle group. Jake had been promoted to Commodore and given command of a squadron of patrol ships. His job was to scout ahead and gather intelligence on Vorthic positions. Darwin, what's our estimated time to the first Vorthic system? Stone asked his ship's artificial intelligence. 3 days at current speed, the AI replied. However, I recommend we consider the psychological impact of our approach. The Vorthic value strength above all else. A slow, methodical advance will demonstrate our confidence and their helplessness. Stone nodded. Darwin understood warfare in ways that went beyond simple tactics. The AI grasped the importance of fear as a weapon. By the time the human fleet reached Vorthic space, every alien in the Dominion would know what was coming. On the Philae, Vorthic homeworld of Mortan, panic was spreading through the military command centers. War leader Gex Valoom, now the highest-ranking Vorthic officer still alive, stared at the reports from the Sol system with disbelief. The mighty fleet of High Commander Zexthel had been completely destroyed. How is this possible? Gex Valoom demanded. From his intelligence officers. Our report said the humans were weak and primitive. Sir, replied one of his subordinates, we believe our intelligence was wrong. The humans appear to have been hiding their true capabilities for decades. Gex Valoom slammed his armored fist on the table, denting the metal surface. The Vorthic had built their empire on the belief that they were the strongest warriors in the galaxy. The idea that they had been defeated by a species they considered inferior was almost impossible to accept. How many ships do we have left? He asked. Approximately 800 vessels across all our conquered systems, came the reply. But sir, many of these are scattered throughout the Dominion. It will take time to gather them into a defensive fleet. Gex Valoom knew that time was something they did not have. The human fleet was already moving toward Vorthic space, and every day they delayed gave the enemy more opportunity to prepare their attack. Send orders to all fleet commanders. Gex Valoom commanded. All ships are to return to Mortan immediately. We will make our stand at the homeworld. The first Vorthic system the humans reached was called Kefmer. It had been conquered only 6 months earlier, and the original inhabitants, a peaceful species called the Banari, were being used as slave labor in the Vorthic mining operations. Commodore Morrison led the advance scouts into the system, expecting to find heavy resistance. Instead, they found something unexpected. The Vorthic garrison had abandoned their posts and fled toward the homeworld, leaving their prisoners behind. This is unexpected, Jake reported to Admiral Stone. The entire Vorthic presence has evacuated. We're detecting approximately 50,000 Banari civilians on the surface of the main planet. Stone considered the situation. The smart military move would be to ignore the civilians and continue toward the Vorthic homeworld. But that was not the human way of doing things. Land rescue teams, Stone ordered. We're not leaving those people to starve. The human rescue operation took 12 hours. Medical teams treated the injured Banari, while engineers repaired the damage done by Vorthic mining equipment. When the work was finished, the liberated aliens looked at their human rescuers with wonder and gratitude. Why did you help us? Asked the Banari leader, an elderly creature with soft gray fur and large black eyes. We are not your people. Colonel Ray Mitchell, the human officer in charge of the rescue operation, smiled gently. Because it was the right thing to do. No one should be treated the way the Vorthic treated you. Word of the human rescue spread quickly through subspace communications. Other species that had been conquered by the Vorthek began to hope that freedom might be possible. The humans were not just warriors. They were liberators. The pattern repeated itself in system after system. The Vorthek forces retreated toward their homeworld, abandoning their conquests rather than face the human fleet in battle. Each liberated world added to the growing legend of human power and mercy. Finally, after 2 weeks of travel, the human fleet reached the Mortan system. The Vorthek homeworld was a harsh, rocky planet with a red sky and thin atmosphere. Orbiting around it was the largest concentration of alien warships ever assembled. Over 700 Vorthek vessels prepared for a final desperate battle. Admiral Stone stood on the bridge of the Retribution, studying the enemy formation. The Vorthek had positioned their ships in defensive rings around their planet, ready to fight to the death for their homeworld. "Darwin, analysis," Stone requested. "The enemy has chosen a defensive posture," the AI reported. "They are hoping that proximity to their homeworld will give them an advantage through shorter supply lines and desperate motivation. However, their formation shows several critical weaknesses." Stone nodded. "Prepare to transmit a message to the Vorthek command." The transmission that went out to the enemy fleet was simple and direct. "This is Admiral Stone of the human fleet. You attacked our homeworld and killed our civilians. Surrender unconditionally, and your people will be spared. Continue to resist, and we will show you the same mercy you showed Luna City." War leader Gex Valoom received the message on his flagship. The human demand for surrender filled him with rage. The Vorthek had never surrendered to anyone. They were warriors, and warriors died in battle. "Send a reply," Gex Valoom ordered. "Tell them that the Vorthek Dominion will never yield to inferior species." Stone received the Vorthek response inside. He had hoped to avoid more bloodshed, but the aliens had made their choice. "All ships, commence final assault," Stone commanded. The battle for Mortan lasted exactly 6 hours. The human fleet moved through the Vorthek defenses like a knife cutting through paper. Darwin coordinated the attack with inhuman precision, targeting enemy weaknesses and exploiting every tactical advantage. The Vorthek fought bravely, but their courage could not overcome the technological gap between the two fleets. Ship after ship fell to human weapons that adapted and learned with each shot. The defensive rings collapsed one by one until only a handful of Vorthek vessels remained. War leader Gex Valoom watched his fleet die around him, and finally understood the magnitude of his species' mistake. The humans had not become powerful recently. They had always been this strong. The galaxy's rule about never messing with humans existed for a very good reason. "Signal surrender," Gex Valoom ordered, his voice heavy with defeat. The remaining Vorthek ships powered down their weapons and submitted to human authority. The war was over, and the galaxy had learned its lesson. The humans were back, and everyone remembered why they had been so careful to leave them alone. Admiral Stone stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking down at the Vorthek homeworld. The planet would be placed under human supervision until its people learned to live peacefully with their neighbors. The other conquered worlds had already been liberated, their original inhabitants free to rebuild their civilizations. "Darwin, send a message to Earth," Stone ordered. "Tell them the threat has been eliminated. It's time to build a better galaxy."